is a longtime friend and client. He and his wife, Candace, have become close friends. They've hosted me many times at their beautiful home here in Alexandria. They've even had me out to the Chesapeake for some oystering. I think that day, DJ shucked 24 oysters for me because I told him I loved oysters and I was always disappointed that I had to share them when you were out dining. And he said, well, ideally, how many would you like? And I said, well, I'd like 24. So he shucked 24 oysters. What he didn't tell me is that after I ate all 24 oysters, I would then be having steak and lobster. So you better believe I ate every bite. But DJ has a long and distinguished career, which many of you probably read about in his bio. He's very focused in affordable housing, has done some amazing things in that area, both at HUD and rural development. He spent so many years at HUD. He stood up the Real Estate Assessment Center, which essentially is an organization within HUD that ensures that the properties that low-income folks are living in across the country are up to standard. And so he really transformed that program. And so it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you my good friend, DJ LaVoy, who I might add also flew Marine One. He flew President Reagan on Marine One.
I have the great pleasure of living down close to the bay, and you grow oysters in what they call floats, and we have about 5,000. So it's always a wonderful thing whenever you feel like having an oyster, walk out and shuck a few and eat fresh oysters, the best you ever tasted. But the reason I'm here today is to give a presentation that Mary asked. I have to tell you, I thought I was fully retired. And at a Christmas party with a little scotch and a libation, next thing I know, I said yes, and here I stand. And I thought to myself, geez, I'm really not sure why I did this, but I think Mary's the main reason, because as she said, we are very good friends, as is we are with Marilyn. Let me start my story with telling you something about myself and places that I have been and things I have done. So I'm a newly minted, brand new second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps in 1969. And on my way to flight school in Pensacola. And my dad, who was a very, very highly decorated Marine aviator, 2 tours in World War II, 2 tours in the Korean War, and took the 1st Marine Squadron into Vietnam in 1963, he said, we're going to get you a start that you will not forget. And he took me that day to Headquarters Marine Corps, which for those that might know, is now where the Air Force Memorial are, but it used to be up on top of that hill right across from the National Cemetery. And there I was sworn into the Marine Corps by General Raymond Davis, who was then the Assistant Commandant and Medal of Honor winner from Korea, Navy Cross, very, very highly regarded Marine. Fast forward 21 years later, I'm a decorated Marine aviator, and I had the distinct pleasure of swearing in one of my sons at Duke University in the NROTC program to become a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. Fast forward a little bit further, and I have now retired from the military, and Andrew Cuomo swore me in as an assistant secretary at HUD as I started my second career. Fast forward to my final swearing in, Secretary Sonny Perdue at the Department of Agriculture. I had the distinct pleasure of being the Undersecretary of Agriculture for Rural Development. And I have to tell you that all those swearing-ins were very special, and I had the honor of swearing in many, many hundreds, if not 1,000 young Marines and other people. But it's something that I really didn't know that much about. So when I was given this opportunity to speak to you folks, I thought, let's talk about something that really I find fascinating now that I know more, and I can share it with you. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the Federal Oath of Office, its historical background and current implications in the United States of America. The Federal Oath of Office is a solemn promise made by elected or appointed officials before they assume their duties. It's a crucial component of public office that requires a pledge of allegiance to the Constitution and the people of the United States. The oath varies slightly depending on the office to be held, whether it is a president, vice president, senator, representative, federal judge, military official, or civil servant. The Constitution contains an oath for the President of the United States. For other officers, including members of Congress, the document specifies only that they shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. In 1789, the first Congress adopted a simple oath. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. In the United States, the federal oath of office was created as a response to the new Constitution and the establishment of a federal government. The first federal oath of office was created when George Washington took the office as the first president of the United States in 1789. The oath included a pledge to faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, a promise to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and a commitment to support and defend the laws of the United States. Since then, the federal oath of office has become a fundamental aspect of democracy and government in the United States. It's an essential tool that ensures that elected officials and public servants take their responsibilities seriously and uphold the rule of law. The oath is a document that is taken very seriously and has been used to remove public officials from office when they fail to properly execute their duties. The oath of office basically remained unchanged from its inception until the 1860s and the American Civil War. At the outbreak of the Civil War in April of 1861, a time of uncertain and shifting loyalties, President Abraham Lincoln ordered all federal civilian employees within the executive branch to take an expanded oath. At the conclusion of its emergency session that summer, Congress adopted legislation requiring executive branch employees to take the expanded oath in support of the Union. Congress passed a law in 1864 requiring federal employees to take the ironclad oath. The oath required employees to swear that they had never supported the Confederacy or engaged in any activities against the United States. The use of the federal oath of office during the Civil War reflects both the importance of loyalty to the national government and the challenge of maintaining that loyalty in a divided and contentious country. The oath became a tool for ensuring that public officials or military officials were committed to the Union and to withholding and upholding the Constitution. Following the Civil War, Congress permitted some former Confederates to take only the second section of the 1862 oath, and an 1868 statute prescribed this alternative oath for any person who has participated in the late rebellion and from whom all legal disabilities arising therefrom have been removed by act of Congress. Northerners complained that the law's unfair double standard that reduced loyal Unionists to take the oath was unfair. After more than a decade, after many complaints, a new generation of lawmakers repealed the first section to what we have now as the constitutional affirmation. The federal oath of office remains a critical component of American democracy and governance, reflecting the country's commitment to upholding the Constitution, protecting the rights of the citizens, and promoting the common good. The Vice President's oath, as authorized by the 12th Amendment to the Constitution, requires the Vice President to swear or affirm, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office to which I am about to enter, so help me God. Congressional oath is required by Article 6 of the Constitution, requires senators and representatives to swear to the firm to the exact same language as that is used by the Vice President. Presidents have used the federal oath of office as a way to set the tone and direction for their presidencies. Many presidents have added additional language to the oath to reflect their priorities or goals. For example, Harry Truman added the phrase, "So help me God," to the oath, which has since been used by all presidents. President Franklin added the promise to defend the principles of economic freedom embodied in the Constitution in his 1937 oath, reflecting his commitment to New Deal policies. One of the most important historical moments of the federal oath of office history was the swearing in of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. After winning his election in 1933, Roosevelt took the oath of office not once, but 4 times. This was due to the fact that the 20th Amendment to the Constitution had been ratified, changing the presidential inauguration dates from March 4th to January 20th. Roosevelt was the first president to be inaugurated on January 20th, and he was reelected 3 times, as necessitating that he be swearing the oath of office 4 times. The oath of office for military officers is different than the federal office for elected officials and public servants. Military oath of office, known as many as the oath of enlistment, is an oath that all military personnel take when they enter military service. The current U.S. military oath of enlistment was introduced in 1960 and reads, I state your name, solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will bear truth, faith, allegiance to the same, and I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. The military oath of office reflects the unique role of the military in protecting the country's security and upholding the Constitution, even in times of war and crisis. Military officers take the oath as a sign of their commitment to the nation and to the safety and well-being of their fellow citizens. The oath is taken when serving any branch of the military, including the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Space Force. Military officers may also take additional oaths if they receive a commission from the president or if they are promoted to a higher rank. The military oath of office is used primarily as a way to ensure loyalty and commitment among military personnel. It is also used to hold military officers accountable for their actions, particularly in case they may have violated international law or committed war crimes. Additionally, the oath is used as a part of military ceremonies and rituals, such as promotion ceremonies, commissioning, and retirements. These occasions provide an opportunity for military officers to reaffirm their commitment to the nation and to their fellow service members. The military oath of office is an essential part of military service. It reflects the military's unique role in protecting the country's security and upholding the Constitution, even in times of war and crisis. The oath is taken by all military personnel when entering service and is used to ensure loyalty and commitment among officers and enlisted ranks. The oath of office for civil service is a pledge that all federal employees take when they are hired or appointed to a position in the government. The current wording of the Civil Service Oath of Office was established in 1953 and reads, I state your name, solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will bear truth and allegiance to the same. I take the obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office which I am about to enter, so help me God. The Civil Service Oath of Office reflects the importance of loyalty and commitment to the Constitution, as well as the responsibility of civil servants to uphold the law and act in the best interest of the American people. Civil servants take the oath as a sign of their commitment to the public and to upholding the highest standards of integrity, transparency, and accountability. It reflects the importance of loyalty and commitment to the Constitution and serves as a reminder of civil servants that they are serving the American people, having a responsibility to act in their best interest. As we can see, the oath of office is a solemn promise by which public and elected officials promise to uphold the values and principles of the Constitution. The oath is not only a legal requirement, but it's a standard by which public officials are expected to conduct themselves while in office. It is a moral and ethical responsibility that ensures that public officials are held accountable for their actions. As a result, the oath of office has become a cornerstone of our political system. It is an affirmation of our nation's core values and beliefs, including the belief in democracy, freedom, and justice. The oath of office is also a symbol of our commitment to this system of our government. It ensures that our government is held to the highest standards, and those who serve in public office do so with honesty and integrity. Over the years, the oath of office has been challenged in various ways. In recent times, questions have been raised over the extent to which the oath binds our elected officials. These questions have gained particular relevance in recent times with high-profile incidents of misconduct by elected officials. In conclusion, the oath of office is a crucial element of our political system. It is a promise by which elected officials pledge to uphold the values and principles of the Constitution. The oath sets a standard for the conduct of those who serve in public office, and it ensures that our government is held to the highest standards of honesty and integrity. As citizens of this great nation, we have a responsibility to hold our elected officials accountable to the oath of office that they have taken. Both the history and importance of the oath make it a critical aspect of our nation's governance, and we should all hold this dear. And that concludes my comments. Thank you. And I think at this point it's open for questions. Is that what we're doing, Mary?
Thank you very much. That was very enlightening and very helpful, especially during these times. I have two questions. One is, it seemed that the president's oath is shorter than the vice president's and the military. And as commander in chief, I wonder why that is. That's the first question. And the second question is, how long does the oath follow you in your life? Through retirement, after you've served?
Great questions. I'll do my best. As to the length of the president's oath, and as I said, I did an extensive amount of research because I certainly found out a lot of things that I didn't know. I thought they were all the same until I started really doing a lot more reading. That particular language is set forth in the Constitution, and it speaks specifically to honoring that part of protecting and defending the Constitution. I think as time went on, what we saw is that for whatever need, look at the Civil War example, we saw additional language being added, as in people that were, speaking truth and not being able to hold it against each other. But that simple, very statement is still to this day that of the President of the United States, and that's all there is to it. Although you saw under, so help me God, as Harry Truman added, then you saw the phrase that came from Roosevelt in '37. But it's a constitutional language that was set in place, and that seems to be it. I will not claim to be a constitutional scholar, so there could be some other component that I don't know exactly, but that's what my readings reveal. As to the second, I would say yes. I have always felt a responsibility, and I'm sure that many of you who have served in the military or civil service yourselves know the importance of honesty and integrity, and you do your best to uphold those standards. You have lived your life in that particular role, and it's something you hold important. You've chosen that particular life as something that you want to be responsible to your fellow citizens for, and so, yes, you hold that in your heart as a guiding light for the rest of your life.
Okay, Kenny, online.
Yes.
You're unmuted.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for your presentation. If I had my way, I would wish you to get up and run the whole nation and read that. I have a question for you. Number one, on January 6th, we all know what happened. What's your opinion about accountability as far as that regards? Should people be held accountable? Number one. And number two, if so, are those treasonous activities when you don't uphold your solemn oath?
Yeah, the question is accountability. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, no, two questions. Number one, on January 6th, we had an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. What is your opinion about accountability as far as people being held accountable? Number one. And number two, if people do not uphold that constitutional oath, is that considered treason?
Let me address the first question. I'm not quite sure on the second, but I'll have you rephrase it for me. And one of the things you find that when you fly jet aircraft for many, many years, your hearing does not do well. So I have to sometimes listen. My wife helps me exceedingly in hearing, that what my grandkids said? Yes, that's what they said. As to accountability, it's something that we have as a nation held people to for some time period. Some would argue that over the years that has loosened to a degree. I would argue, speaking personally, that accountability, I know from my time in the Marine Corps, was something that basically you lived every day. If you, as a commanding officer or in a role of responsibility, made a mistake, you were let relieved of command instantly. If you, in fact, were somebody that did something that was not holding the highest traditions of the military or naval service, then there was always a price to pay. Not quite to that same high standard, I would say, in other forms from what we've seen historically, probably because the Uniform Code of Military Justice only applies to the military. And there is a very strict regime entitled with that, as you would expect for the military and what it requires. But I think accountability is something that the nation as a whole would like to see happen. We'd like to see everybody, as they take a pledge, to do what they believe to be right and to do what's in the best interest of the American people. I hope that answered your question, but
That was the first one, sir. And the second one, if you do not uphold your solemn oath, is that considered treason?
now we're getting really deep. Okay. Treason is an interesting word, and there are laws that apply to it specifically. It is normally held to being a violation of a particular point that you are responsible for. Is it a treasonous act if you don't uphold your necessary pledge that you have given? And I would say it depends on the circumstances, and I'm certainly not an attorney, nor do I prepare or exactly think I should enter that new role. But I know that from an historical perspective, when we have seen people charged with treason, it's almost always a violation of something that puts the risk of our nation at risk. Treasonous acts that we have seen in other such times have been things that, once again, we felt were of such a magnitude that the country responded accordingly. Look at some of the things that have happened here recently, as in some of our recent conflicts with military folks, and there has been 2 or 3 that, in fact, have been accused of and convicted of treason. But on the side of people in civil service and elected political positions, you certainly hear the word used regularly, but I don't know of anyone who has been put in a position, although I remember back to the Civil War, I think President Johnson, who succeeded Lincoln, was accused of treason, but there never was a trial or anything where he was actually put out of office. I hope that answers your question.
Could you elaborate or tell us personally or through your research where you have encountered someone who decided not to take an oath in front of an audience and what happened?
Good question. I'm just looking back at my many years of service. It's a good question. And I do remember a time in, I think it was in the mid 80s, that there was an individual who had been promoted to the next rank, which is a traditional time of taking the oath again. And they did not take the oath and they resigned their commission. Now, I don't know if the oath was the driver of that, but that certainly was involved, because when it came time for the actual swearing in, when you do it, to everybody's surprise in the room, this individual had just been promoted to major, and he walked up and said, "I'm not taking this oath of office and I'm resigning my commission." And so that's as close as I can say. In terms of somebody who didn't want to take the oath and still hold the position, I've never seen that conflict or heard of it in my research. Certainly. Yes, sir.
I have a question expanding a little bit on what Kenny asked, but putting it in a historical perspective. I think the tricky bit is protecting against enemies, foreign and domestic. And there's kind of a legal process for declaring war against an enemy, and they become official. And it's a little harder to declare, unless there's southern states going to war, a domestic enemy. You could have yours, I could have mine. But in the 1930s, we had a number of fascist movements in this country who took leadership from the German government and actually conducted activities against munitions in munitions sites, both construction and storage, in New Jersey and New York, and they were not convicted. As soon as we declared war against Germany, they would have become enemies of our state. But who declares an enemy? Is it a thought process that leads you to communism or fascism? you may want to undermine this government. And I think the people on January 6th were trying to do it and overthrow it. I consider them enemies, but maybe there are others who disagree with that. I haven't heard.
No, it's a fascinating topic, and I'm sure with a glass of your favorite libation, we could talk about this for a long time. But I think that, you know, to address the part that you were speaking of, and I'm a fan and student of history, I know that there was a lot of people who were very, very strong supporters of the fascist movement and the communist movement, and I know that they, in fact, built things in anticipation of that coming to this country. But to the declaration of war, look at the declaration of war for World War I, World War II, there has not been one since. And yet, by resolution of Congress, we, in fact, as the military, I can speak myself, having been to several places besides Vietnam, that Lebanon and Grenada and several other places that I've been, Iraq, etc., that was never a declaration of war. It was an action that took place. However, if you are in the military and you heard that oath as ordered by the president and those officers over you, then that's the choice you're following. So if you're going to keep your career, if you will, as a military officer and honor the commitments that you have accepted, that's just what you're going to do. And it's probably something you could debate internally, and maybe this is why the officer back in the 80s decided he wasn't going to do this anymore. But yeah, it's a topic that is challenging.
DJ, on behalf of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. and our Trees for the Capital program, I'm pleased and proud to present you this certificate signifying our commitment to plant a tree in your honor. And I understand you spoke to us a couple years ago in 2018, but now we have GPS coordinates with the National Park Service, which will tell you exactly where your tree is. And on June 28, we're going to do our planting ceremony where we now invite our speakers. So if you're in town, I hope you could make it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.